Fine. Welcome to the session 4 of the Principles of Mobile Marketing. And in this session, we're going to be looking at mobile optimization strategies. So, thinking about mobile optimization, when I'm speaking to brands getting them into mobile, one of the first things I recommend to them is just optimize your mobile site. And it's very easy to optimize that experience. It can be done simply just by getting the right kind of landing page. Now, the way that mobile optimization works is that each browser has what's called a user agent. So if it's on the desktop, it says, I'm a Firefox, I'm a Chrome, or whatever. And on mobile, it says, I'm an iPhone, or I'm an Android phone. And it will actually say the model of the phone. So simply by looking at that user agent, you can then deliver the right kind of page. So you can say, well, look, if this is an iPhone, we're going to deliver a page that works for an iPhone. And you can segment it across different devices, or you can just have mobile and desktop. But it's pretty simple to do, and it's a very effective way for brands to actually get into mobile. The example that you see here from Next actually gives people the option to view the site as mobile web, but also redirects people to their iPhone app because the user agent has told them that it's an iPhone. It's important to think about how different user demographics behave with their handsets. The key thing is, although we've talked about the importance of the smartphone ownership in session 1, we talked about the importance of smartphone ownership within the landscape, it isn't a case that everybody does exactly the same things. So within different demographics, we see different kind of usages. So for example, here, it shows the difference between an iPhone and Nokia by income. And you can actually see that Apple, for example, is skewed much towards people on higher incomes, whereas Nokia tends to be lower incomes. But the more you understand about this, the better you can actually optimize your sites because you can target it to the right people. First thing you need to think about is the screen type. Now, on an iPhone, you obviously have a touch screen, but on other mobile devices, that interaction is different. So a cursor-driven phone, people are going to interact with that differently to a touch screen. Touch screens have actually informed a lot of the layout we do, particularly things like the swiping that you can do on a phone and so on. And that you can actually use within the user interactivity. But if you haven't got that, and you're just dealing with a simpler phone or one with just a keypad and a cursor, you need to optimize that site differently. And then one of the problems with mobile is the screen sizes. And it's not just a case that the screen is smaller, it's also a case that you get a whole set of different ratios. And the number of options on mobile are far, far greater than those on desktop. So you need to consider how is your site going to look across a range of devices. And a well thought out, a well-developed site is going to draw well across every single handset. And of course, the other point is your content strategy. If you look at a traditional desktop site, you can see what are the main things that you're trying to do with it. So if you take a look at someone like Marks & Spencer's, their desktop site is aimed for a particular use. But as soon as you get onto mobile, it isn't a case of just, well, we want this to look good on the device. You also need to think about the intent. Why are we doing it? So if you imagine in the old days of desktop, we're always sitting by a computer with a keyboard. As soon as you move away from that and you've got this thing in your hand, the interaction becomes quite different and the reasons for doing things. In session 3 on mobile ad formats, we talked about the importance of location. So for example, people on mobile devices are looking to do things in their area. So things like store finders are going to be much more important on a mobile device than, for example, on desktop, where you might be pushing towards online purchase. So it's important to understand the differences, not just in the format itself, but in the user intent, and strategize your content accordingly. Similarly, UX is really, really important in mobile. If you deliver a poor user experience, you will drive people away. If you deliver them a good experience, you'll retain them. And a study from the IAB showed that actually, if you deliver people a good, optimized mobile internet experience, they stay 3.5 times longer than if you just try and deliver a desktop experience onto mobile. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to get as few page loads as possible. You want to keep that journey as short and as immediate as you can. And you need to think about the page weight so that the content and the data is not too heavy when it's delivered. Again, we were looking at the ad formats in session 3. We talked about the importance of page loading in terms of search optimization. So it's both about delivering the best UX, but it's also going to help you get a better ranking within Google. So let's start off by looking at Marks and Spencer's, who are one of the first UK retailers to get in onto the mobile side. So here is the search results, and I select their site, and as you can see, it automatically goes to their site. And they bring up a nice little bit of functionality here, which is, did you know you can save it as an icon on your desktop? So that's great. So now here's the site loading. Now what Marks and Spencer have done, they've used a very familiar design language for this, and it's called running on rails. And what you can see is there's no side-to-side movement, it's purely up and down. So imagine that the page is attached to a railway track. Now if you're on a mobile device, this is much easier than having to move all the way around. And even though on an iPhone we have pinch to zoom, this is actually a much more effective way. And then we talked about the need to get into things quickly. So I'm looking at women's clothes, obviously, and now actually, if you look at the bottom here, I can log in, and had I been logged in, you can actually do a one-click purchase. The other element, of course, as I've already said, location is really important. You can see right at the top here, the store finder is nice and big, and it's much bigger than their desktop site. So that's Marks and Spencer's, and a lot of retail sites have followed this kind of design. But as we get more sophisticated, maybe now is a time to change the way we think about this. Here is a site from the States, actually, for Cedar Point Park. And I like this because they've moved away from just running on rails. Now, the first thing they've done is they've clearly targeted who their user is. So I'm in the park or I'm planning to visit. So let's say I'm actually in the park right now. So it gives me information about the rise and today. So it's a really nice bit of usability, UX here. And it gives me the information. I can look at the food. I've got maps. And obviously, if you get a good interaction, would also include the GPS, so it would actually allow you to see where you are and using all the features of the handset. And here's another example of great usability. So Mercedes-Benz in Germany. In the UK, they don't have a very good mobile site, but the German one is excellent. And it's just really nice. It's got a full interactive feel. It's got video incorporated. And this is really where brands need to be going with their mobile optimization in future. As with desktop, it's equally important that you are able to analyze your users and your visits. So analytics are just as important. There are developing number of analytics available, but it's really important that you actually look at things like completion of user journeys, and increasingly techniques like attribution can be equally applied to mobile web. One of the really important features about mobile is that it is a phone. We talked about this in the third session on mobile advertising. So even within your sites, you can include click-to-call. So the HTML can actually then link the phone number straight into the handset so that you can make a phone call direct to the company. The other important thing to remember is the significance of social media in your marketing strategy. We know that in some circumstances, up to 50% of your users are actually coming through mobile devices onto social media. Facebook and Twitter tell us that it's nearly half of their users. So it's really important that if you already have a social media strategy, you're actually in mobile already. So the question is how well are you going to optimize it? So we briefly looked at Marks and Spencer's site. So for example, if you click on a link from Marks and Spencer's, you can see that it will take you to their mobile optimized site. But interestingly, not every brand is getting it right. Here is an example from Topshop. So Topshop are a very busy brand in social media. They have 250,000 Facebook followers, a similar number on Twitter. And they're putting out offers through there. So what happens if I click on that link? Well, it takes me to a non-optimized site. Now, that site looks okay. It's not the worst, and you can pinch to zoom. But nonetheless, it's not as good user experience as the Marks and Spencer site. And we know from having measured it that 3.5 times more people will actually interact with a mobile optimized site than a non-mobile optimized version. So for any brand that's active in social media, if you haven't optimized for mobile, then you are missing out. So brands are beginning to understand the relevance of mobile and social media. So there I was criticizing Topshop for not getting it right, but they did do some interesting things. So in the summer of 2011, they used Instagram, the picture-taking social media site, in order to do a summer promotion. The whole campaign was based around the idea of a wish you were here kind of postcard. But the way they did it is, rather than expecting all their users to be on Instagram, they just used Instagram as the means by which to post the photos. So people would come into the store, have a makeover, and then they would use an iPad to take a picture of them. And that would be through Instagram. The customer could choose their Instagram filters that they would like, and then they would get posted to their Facebook page. As a result, 2,000 photos and 2,000 comments, and through that and the Facebook feed, over 5 million people saw that. Another example of social media in the mobile sense is the KLM surprises. So I'm just going to show you a bit of video from that, and I want you to think about what you feel about this campaign and whether it's a successful campaign or a bad campaign. So this is an example from KLM, who did their KLM surprises. So it was actually, they started doing this during the volcanic ash cloud a year or so ago. So what they said was, look, waiting at the airport is a boring thing. So they looked for users who were using their mobile devices and checking in through Facebook, Twitter or Foursquare. And as they put it, discreetly looking at their profile, they would see what type of person they were and give them a relevant gift. So in the video here, they're running to find somebody who's about to board a flight for Abu Dhabi. In this case, it's a woman who, on her profile, she says how much into running she is. So they're going to give her a Nike Plus sports watch. So they're running around there trying to find it. She's updated on Twitter. Someone else, for example, who updated through Foursquare, they gave them some iTunes vouchers. So here she is getting the gift. So this is an interesting example of brands doing social media. Now, the thing about this campaign is it seems to divide audiences. About half the people think it's great. And there's a very good reason why this is great. And that's because you've told her, what's the first thing she's going to do? Well, we know she's active in social media, so the first thing she's going to do is to update her Twitter her Twitter feed or her Facebook status. But other people say it's intrusive. And this is a great example of both the opportunities and the problems of mobile. You can get great engagement, but if you get it wrong, you will annoy people. Interestingly, Gatwick have picked up, it's not the surprise idea, but they're using Twitter as their service feed. So you can tweet anything you like, from the toilets being unclean to the length of the queues at border control, and they will run around and sort it out. So there are opportunities for mobile social media, but you do have to consider how you use those.